I swear, if that smug bastard had said one more word, I would have turned the table over just to shut him up. We were at a dinner I didn't even want. My wife, Ashley, had asked me to meet her for a serious talk. I thought maybe she was finally ready to fix things. I was wrong. The restaurant was dim, all candlelight and fake sophistication. She was already seated when I arrived, next to him. Chase Donovan, her colleague. He had on one of those too tight black shirts, the kind you wear when you want the world to know you curled dumbbells more often than you read books. Ashley's laugh, too high, too rehearsed, bounced off the wine glasses as she leaned toward him, her hand a little too close to his thigh. She motioned to the chair across from them. "Logan, this is Chase. You've heard me mention him from work." Yeah, I'd heard. Too often. The mentor, the inspiration, the guy who just gets her. I sat down, smiled politely, and clenched my fists under the table. Then Chase leaned forward, locked eyes with me like we were in some bad Western standoff, and said, real smooth, "I'll make this simple. You've got two options. Leave quietly, or face me like a man." Ashley didn't flinch. She smiled. That's when I knew the whole dinner was a setup. I wasn't sitting across from a colleague. I was sitting across from my replacement that I didn't flip the table, didn't lunge across the candles like some movie brawler. No, that would have been too easy for them. That's what they wanted. Me red-faced, humiliated, storming out while they clinked glasses. Instead, I leaned back in my chair, folded my hands, and smiled. The kind of smile that makes people nervous because it means you're thinking 3 moves ahead. "You want me to leave quietly?" I said, calm as a surgeon. "Then you'll have to give me something worth walking away for." Chase smirked, like he thought this was a poker game. Ashley avoided my eyes, swirling her wine. "Logan," she started, voice dripping with rehearsed pity. "It's just, we're not working anymore. You don't make me feel alive." I almost laughed out loud. Alive. The word rolled around my skull like a bad punchline. I built a house, paid every bill, held her through her mother's illness, fixed her car in the rain, and apparently, that was the emotional equivalent of a flatline. Alive. I said, "Is that what this is? Him flexing in the mirror while you play cheerleader?" Chase bristled. Ashley shot me that look, you know the one. The look that says you're embarrassing me in front of company. But here's the thing. I wasn't embarrassed. Not anymore. I was cataloging, filing away every little smirk, every word, every tell. Because while she thought I was losing, I was already building the case. That night, after they left in his overwaxed Mustang, I went home. The house smelled different. His cologne, cheap and musky, still hanging in the air. The bed was made too neatly, hotel-style corners. Ashley never made the bed like that. I didn't rage, didn't scream. I sat at the dining table with my laptop and opened a folder I'd quietly started months ago. I called it Exit Strategy. Inside, bank statements, screenshots, her business trips that overlapped with Chase's gym competitions. Receipts she thought I wouldn't notice. Funny thing about being underestimated, it makes gathering evidence real easy. And that night, I made a promise to myself. I wouldn't just leave. I'd win. 2 mornings later, Ashley floated into the kitchen like nothing had happened. Hair tied up, coffee in hand, scrolling her phone like she hadn't paraded me in front of Chase like a prop. "What?" she said when she caught me staring at her across the table. I didn't answer, just slid the tablet toward her, screen open on a photo. Her, in a hotel mirror, barely dressed. Chase in the background, shirtless, brushing his teeth. Date stamped last weekend, the same night she claimed she was at a friend's baby shower. Her fingers froze mid-scroll. Her eyes flicked up to mine. "Why were you snooping through my stuff?" "Not I'm sorry. Not it's not what it looks like. Just deflection." "You lied to me," I said quietly. "You humiliated me in public. You gaslit me for months. And you brought him into our lives like I wouldn't notice." She rolled her eyes, sipped her coffee. "Oh my God, Logan. You're being dramatic. Chase makes me feel something. You just don't anymore." That was the moment. Right there. That was when I stopped looking at her as my wife and started looking at her as a case file. Because if she wanted feelings, she could have them. Me? I wanted leverage. And leverage I had. By noon, I was in my office downtown, scanning copies of every receipt, every screenshot, every travel expense she'd claimed. I dropped them into 3 different encrypted drives. One labeled, for lawyer, another, for HR, and the last, for her. You see, Ashley thought she was 2 steps ahead. What she didn't know was that I was already building a chessboard while she was still playing tic-tac-toe. That night, she came home late, smelling like a perfume I hadn't bought. She kissed me on the cheek like it was still 2012. I kissed her back, smiled, let her believe she was winning. Because the thing about cracks, they spread faster than people think. And I was just getting started with the hammered. There's a peculiar silence in a house where trust has died. It's not the absence of sound, it's the absence of weight. The laughter doesn't linger in the walls anymore. The air doesn't feel lived in. You're just two strangers renting space under the same roof, pretending the mortgage makes you a family. That was me and Ashley, week 3 of my exit strategy. On the surface, I was the same man I'd always been, making breakfast, mowing the lawn, reading the news at the table. But beneath that calm exterior, every move I made was calculated. Every word, every smile, every nod was another piece of camouflage, because Ashley still thought she was holding all the cards. But here's the thing about women like her. They underestimate silence. To them, silence looks like surrender. To me, it's just the sound of sharpening knives. The seed of doubt. It started small. I picked my moments carefully. We were in the kitchen one evening, her sipping wine, me chopping vegetables. She scrolled through her phone, no doubt waiting for a text from her beloved Chase. You know what's funny? I said casually, not even looking up from the cutting board. What? She replied, bored already. I was talking to an old friend who works in HR at your company. Said it's wild how strict they've gotten about workplace relationships. Her hand froze halfway to her glass. Just for a second. Then she laughed it off. Oh, please. People date at work all the time. It's not a big deal. Sure, I said, sliding onions into the pan. Unless one of them's married. Then it's, what's the phrase? A liability. Her eyes flicked to me, narrowed slightly, then went back to her phone. You're being paranoid again. Maybe. But that seed was planted. And doubt grows like weeds. A visit to Chase. 3 days later, I paid Chase a visit. Not at his apartment. I wasn't about to give him the satisfaction of some macho doorstep showdown. No, I waited until he was leaving his gym, protein shake in hand, strutting like he owned the parking lot. Chase, I called out, voice calm, steady. He turned, smirk already loaded. Logan, didn't expect to see you here. Looking for a membership? No, I said, stepping closer. I'm looking for honesty. His smirk widened. About Ashley? I think you already know. I nodded. I do. But here's what you don't know. See, while you've been busy flexing in mirrors, I've been busy documenting. Every text, every receipt, every hotel charge. And I've already shared them with HR. They'll decide if your little romance is worth your career. For the first time, his smirk faltered. Just a flicker, but I saw it. He tried to mask it with a chuckle. You're bluffing. I pulled a small envelope from my jacket. Inside was a single sheet, an itemized receipt from the Burstone Hotel. 2 guests. One of them, Ashley Donovan. Date stamped 3 weeks ago. I handed it to him. Keep it. Souvenir. He stared at it, then looked back at me. His jaw clenched. You think this scares me? He said. No. I replied, stepping close enough that he could smell the steel in my voice. I think it scares her. And that's enough. I walked away, leaving him with his protein shake and the sudden realization that this wasn't just a fling anymore. It was a war. The trap. Ashley came home that night humming. That fake, sing-song hum she always used when she thought she'd gotten away with something. Good day at work? I asked, folding laundry in the living room. MHM, she replied, breezing past me toward the bedroom. I let her settle, pour herself a drink, scroll through whatever nonsense Chase had texted her to reassure her fragile ego. Then I called out. Oh, by the way, your boss called me today. She froze in the hallway. What? I kept my tone casual, like it was barely worth mentioning. Said there's been some concern about, what did he call it? Optics. Between you and Chase. I told him I'd let you explain it. The color drained from her face. You talked to my boss? Of course, I said, smiling like it was the most normal thing in the world. We ran into each other at a fundraiser last year, remember? Great guy. Very reasonable. She stammered, trying to form a defense, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, she snapped, You're insane. You're making things up to control me. I folded the last shirt, stacked it neatly, and looked her dead in the eye. Or maybe I'm just finally paying attention. She stormed off, slamming the bedroom door. But I could hear her pacing. Panic pacing. The trap was set. The power shift. Over the next week, I tightened the screws. Subtle moves, nothing she could trace back directly to me. A notice from the bank accidentally left on the counter, showing that her personal credit card, funded quietly through my account, had been frozen. A call from a mutual friend checking in after hearing rumors about her and Chase at the office. An anonymous tip slipped into HR's inbox with screenshots attached. By Friday, she was unraveling. The smugness was gone, replaced with sharp little bursts of irritation. She'd snap at me over nothing. The dishwasher, the thermostat, the way I breathed too loudly. But beneath it all, I could see it. Fear. Not of losing me. No, she'd already thrown that away. But fear of losing her carefully curated image, the respectable professional, the flawless wife, the woman who had it all. And that fear was my leverage. The conversation. It all came to a head one evening when she burst into the kitchen, eyes blazing. "What are you doing to me?" she demanded. I looked up from my coffee. "Excuse me. Don't play dumb, Logan. The bank, the HR rumors, the whatever games you're playing. Stop it." I set my mug down slowly. Games. Ashley, I'm not the one who's been sneaking around hotels, lying about conferences, or bringing another man to dinner with my husband like it's open mic night. Her face twisted. "You don't understand. Chase makes me feel alive. He is about to lose his job," I cut in. "And you? You're about to lose everything else." She blinked. "You wouldn't." I leaned forward, voice low, steady. "Ashley, look at me. Does this look like a man who bluffs?" Silence. Just the sound of her shallow breathing. Finally, she whispered, "What do you want?" I smiled. "You'll find out soon enough." That night, as she tossed and turned in bed beside me, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. Not with rage, not with heartbreak. With clarity. Because for the first time in months, maybe years, I wasn't the placeholder in my own life anymore. I was the architect. And Ashley? She was just another blueprint waiting to be torn down. There's a peculiar power in being underestimated. It's like walking into a poker game where everyone thinks you don't know the rules. They play sloppy. They overbet. They smirk when you hesitate. But what they don't realize is, you've already counted the cards. Ashley still thought she had me cornered. To her, I was the boring husband with the 9-to-5 and the habit of folding socks too neatly. A placeholder, a safety net, the guy she could humiliate in public and still expect to mow the lawn the next morning. But I wasn't the lawnmower anymore. I was the storm. The lawyer. My first stop was Marcus. My lawyer. The man had a handshake like a vice and a memory sharper than a guillotine. He leaned back in his leather chair, flipping through the folder I'd handed him. Screenshots. Receipts. Copies of emails I'd pulled off the family iPad before Ashley even realized it synced her messages. "This," he said, tapping the stack, "isn't just grounds for divorce. This is artillery." I nodded. "I don't want just divorce, Marcus. I want control. House, accounts, everything. I want her walking away with nothing but Chase's protein shakes and her fake nails." He smirked. "Then we'll make her look reckless. Selfish. Unfit. Judges don't like liars, especially when it bleeds into finances. You've got her hotel charges, proof of her lying about conferences. Keep stacking it. The more we show her lifestyle is funded by you, the easier it gets." "I already froze her personal card," I said. "She'll notice soon." "Good," Marcus replied. "Let her sweat. Fear makes people sloppy." And that was the theme of my strategy. Make her sloppy. Planting shadows. That weekend, Ashley strutted into the kitchen in yoga pants and sunglasses the size of satellites. "Going out with friends," she said, not meeting my eyes. "Which friends?" I asked casually. She hesitated. Lacey. Lacey. The same Lacey who'd moved to Arizona 6 months ago. She forgot I still had her number in my phone. "Tell her I said hi," I replied, smiling. She froze, then forced a laugh. "Sure." I watched her leave, heels clicking on the tile like a metronome for liars. 5 minutes later, I texted a buddy who owed me a favor. He worked security at the Burstone Hotel. "She's coming in," I wrote. "Make sure the cameras remember it." By midnight, I had crystal clear footage of Ashley walking through the lobby with Chase, his hand pressed to her lower back like he was escorting royalty. Dinner with friends. The following Wednesday, we had dinner with a couple of mutual friends, Tim and Carla. The type who'd known us long enough to recognize when something was off, but polite enough not to ask. Ashley spent the evening laughing too loud, sipping wine like it was oxygen, telling stories about her stress at work. Chase's name almost slipped twice, but she caught herself. I stayed quiet until dessert. Then, when the conversation lulled, I leaned forward. Funny thing, I said. Ashley's been traveling a lot for conferences lately. Always at the Burstone. Did you two ever stay there? Carla frowned. Isn't that the place with the lavender-scented lobby? Yeah, I said, locking eyes with Ashley. Lavender and stale desperation. That's the one. Ashley's fork clinked against her plate. She forced a smile, but her hand trembled as she reached for her glass. Tim looked between us, uneasy. Everything okay? Perfect, I said smoothly. We're just working things out. Ashley didn't speak the rest of the night. The password. The next day, while she showered, I slid her laptop open. No password change. Rookie mistake. I wasn't interested in her browsing history. Already had more than enough of that. No, I wanted the calendar. And there it was, a dinner scheduled with Chase, marked as Client Strategy Meeting. Location, Burstone Hotel Restaurant. Time, 7:30 p.m. Friday. I smiled, took a screenshot, and closed the laptop. By the time she stepped out of the bathroom, humming, I was sitting at the table with the morning paper. Big weekend ahead, I asked. She blinked, towel in hand. Why? Just a feeling, I said, not looking up. The game tightens. Friday came. She dressed carefully, too carefully, for what she claimed was just dinner with a client. Heels. Perfume. That silk blouse she swore was too fancy for every day. You look nice, I said, tying my own shoes. Thanks, she replied cautiously. Don't wait up. Oh, I won't, I said, grabbing my jacket. Her eyes narrowed. Where are you going? Poker night, I lied. Don't wait up either. We both smiled, both knowing the other was lying. But only one of us knew the other's lie was already documented. The sting. At 7:25, I was parked 2 blocks from the Burstone. I didn't need to go inside. I had people for that. My buddy in security texted me a live still from the cameras. Ashley and Chase walking arm in arm into the restaurant, laughing like teenagers. 2 minutes later, another angle. Him brushing hair from her face, her leaning into him. I saved each photo, time-stamped, filed into my growing archive. Ashley, evidence. Then I drove home, made myself a drink, and waited. The confrontation. She came home past midnight, smelling of wine and expensive cologne. She tried to sneak in quietly, but I was waiting in the living room, the lamp casting just enough light to make her pause. You're up, she said, startled. Couldn't sleep, I replied. Poker game ran short. She set her purse down, fidgeting. Well, I'm exhausted. Long dinner. Client strategy? I asked casually. Her face stiffened. Yes. I tapped my phone. The screen lit up with a photo. Her and Chase at the Burstone, timestamp glowing like a spotlight. Her breath caught. Where did you get that? I leaned back in my chair, voice calm, even. Ashley, I told you weeks ago, I don't bluff. The panic. She tried to pivot. You don't understand. I needed. What? I cut in. Excitement? Validation? Someone to tell you you're alive? Fine. Chase can do that. But he can't pay the mortgage. He can't clean your record with HR. He can't fix the hole you've dug with the courts once I hand all this over. Her voice cracked. You wouldn't. I stood, slid the phone back into my pocket, and walked past her. Sleep tight, Ashley. Big week ahead. Behind me, I heard her whisper, trembling now. Logan, please. But I didn't turn around. Because for the first time, she wasn't in control. I was. That night, as I lay in bed, I realized something. I didn't even want her apology. I didn't want her tears. What I wanted was simple, her downfall. And she just handed me the matches that there's a difference between anger and strategy. Anger burns fast, leaves you exhausted and empty. Strategy? That's a slow fire. It smolders, spreads, and eventually consumes everything in its path. Ashley thought she'd seen my anger. The raised voice here, the cutting remark there. What she didn't realize was that I'd never actually been angry at her. Not once. No, I'd been studying her. And now, it was time to make her trip over her own lies. A quiet withdrawal. Saturday morning, I made breakfast like always. Eggs, toast, coffee. She came down late, bleary-eyed from the wine, mascara smudged like a raccoon trying to look human. She sat at the table, cautious. Morning. Morning, I said cheerfully, sliding a plate toward her. Eat up, you'll need your strength. She frowned. For what? Oh, you'll see. I let the silence hang just long enough for her nerves to prickle, then picked up the paper like nothing had changed. While she forced down toast, I tapped a note on my phone. A single instruction went out to Marcus, my lawyer: proceed with account transfers. By noon, 3 of our joint accounts were drained into a trust under my name. Perfectly legal. Perfectly timed. She wouldn't even notice until her next online shopping spree got declined, turning friends into witnesses. Revenge isn't just about money, it's about narrative. If you control the story, you control the outcome. So I invited Tim and Carla, the same friends from dinner, over for a casual barbecue. Ashley tried to wriggle out of it, claiming she had work to catch up on, but I insisted. They'd be disappointed, I said with a smile. And you wouldn't want people to think you're avoiding them, right? Her eyes narrowed, but she agreed. The evening was perfect: grilled steaks, cold beer, casual laughter. I played the charming host, while Ashley sat stiff, clearly itching to check her phone every 10 seconds. At one point, Carla asked, "So, Ashley, how's work? Still keeping you busy?" Ashley opened her mouth, but I cut in smoothly. "Oh, she's been at the Burstone a lot lately. Strategic meetings, you know." Carla blinked. "Isn't that the hotel with the lavender lobby?" Ashley's face flushed. "It's just work." I shrugged, handing Tim a beer. "Of course. Still, kind of funny how much work smells like cologne these days." The silence that followed was delicious. Not accusatory, not explosive, just heavy. Exactly the kind of silence that plants doubts in friends' minds. By the time they left, Ashley was seething. But the damage was done. Our friends would talk, and gossip spreads faster than truth ever could. The social shift. Sunday night, I struck again. Ashley was upstairs in the shower when I logged into her Facebook. She'd been careless, never changed the password from the one she gave me years ago. I didn't post anything. I didn't need to. I simply downloaded a copy of every photo, every message, every flirty comment she'd left on Chase's page. Then I crafted a neat little folder labeled Ashley Highlights. A week later, snippets from that folder began circulating among our wider circle. Anonymously, of course. Screenshots of her work husband captions, flirty emojis on Chase's gym selfies. Just enough to paint the picture. By Monday morning, Ashley was fielding cold stares at the office. By Tuesday, she came home furious. "Did you do this?" she demanded, waving her phone in my face. "Do what?" I asked, genuinely puzzled looking. "People at work," she sputtered. "They're talking. They're saying things." I raised an eyebrow. "About what?" Her silence was all the answer I needed. The professional collapse. 2 days later, Marcus called. His voice was practically giddy. "Logan, you won't believe this," he said. "HR just opened an internal review into Ashley and Chase. Your evidence tipped the scales. She's facing suspension pending investigation." I smiled into the phone. "Perfect. Let it play out." That night, Ashley stumbled through the door, pale and shaken. She didn't even make it to the kitchen. "They suspended me," she whispered. I feigned concern. "Really? Over what?" "You know what," she hissed. I leaned back in my chair, folded my hands. "Ashley, if you've been making bad choices, I can't help you with that." She stared at me, eyes wide with a mixture of fear and rage. For the first time, she wasn't the one holding the upper hand. The domestic reversal. With Ashley suspended, the household dynamic flipped overnight. Suddenly, she was the one pacing around, anxious and restless, while I stayed calm, steady, untouchable. I still made breakfast, still mowed the lawn, still greeted neighbors with a smile. On the outside, nothing had changed. But Ashley? She was unraveling. Bills started bouncing, thanks to the accounts I'd closed. She couldn't cover her credit card charges, couldn't buy her boutique yoga gear. The Range Rover payment she'd once bragged about declined. "Logan," she snapped one morning, holding up a red notice. "The car's overdue." I looked at her over my coffee. "That's odd. Maybe Chase can help you cover it." Her jaw dropped. "You're really doing this to me?" I set my mug down slowly. "Ashley, you did this to yourself." The key move. The final stroke was simple, almost elegant. Remember that oak box I'd carved years ago? The one meant for cufflinks, now filled with evidence? It was time to use it. I slipped it into my briefcase and drove to Marcus's office. Together, we filed the motion, divorce on grounds of infidelity, with full supporting evidence. Copies went to the court, HR, and Ashley herself. By Friday afternoon, she was served at the house. I wasn't even there. I'd arranged for the papers to be delivered while I was at the office, enjoying a quiet lunch. When I came home, she was waiting. Papers spread across the table, her face pale and hollow. "You're divorcing me?" she whispered. I hung up my jacket, walked past her, and poured myself a drink. "I'm not divorcing you, Ashley," I said calmly. "I'm liberating myself." The plea. That night, she finally cracked. Tears, begging, the whole performance. "Logan, please," she sobbed. "I made a mistake. I can change. Don't do this." I studied her for a long moment, then set down my glass. "You want the truth?" I said. "I stopped loving you the night you invited me to dinner just to parade Chase in front of me. That wasn't a mistake, Ashley. That was who you are. And I don't lose sleep over who you are anymore." She collapsed into a chair, broken, for the first time in years. I saw her without the mask. And you know what? She looked small. The twist. Here's the part she never saw coming. I didn't want to just leave her penniless. No, that would have been too easy. What I wanted was to leave her standing in the ruins of the life she thought she controlled, watching me walk away intact. So when Marcus called the next day, saying we could easily pursue alimony, I shook my head. "No," I said. "Let her keep just enough to survive. Struggling is worse than starving. Because true revenge isn't about taking everything. It's about leaving just enough so they know exactly what they lost." And Ashley? She was about to live in that reminder every single day. By the end of that week, the board was set, the pieces in motion. All that was left was the final, cruel checkmate. And believe me, it was coming. Ashley's suspension at work turned into termination. HR didn't say it outright, but everyone knew. The affair with Chase was the nail in the coffin. She tried to keep her chin up, but desperation has a smell. It clings. By the second week, she was calling creditors, pawning jewelry, even begging her sister for a small loan. Meanwhile, I kept playing the calm husband. Mowed the lawn, waved at neighbors, hosted cookouts. To them, I was still the solid one. Ashley. She was unraveling in plain sight. One night she muttered, "People are talking about me, Logan. Everyone's whispering." I looked up from my book. Are they? Or are they just noticing? Her eyes filled with tears. "You're enjoying this, aren't you?" I smiled faintly. "Not yet. The real revenge wasn't the divorce, the frozen accounts, or even the ruined reputation. That was just foreplay. The real move? The house. See, Ashley thought she'd fight me for it. She even said it once, slamming a cupboard. At least I'll keep the house. You can't take that from me." What she didn't know was that the deed had already been shifted into my trust months before she brought Chase into our lives. Ironclad, uncontestable. So when the divorce papers reached the property section, she skimmed, confused. "Wait, why isn't the house listed?" "It's not marital property," I said. "It's mine." Her face twisted. "That's impossible." I slid the paperwork across the table. "Read the dates." And in that moment, she realized she wasn't losing me. She was losing the walls around her, the roof over her head, the life she thought was hers. But here's where the knife turned. I didn't just throw her out. That would have been too merciful. Instead, I gave her one final humiliation, the illusion of dignity before the truth. I hosted a little farewell dinner. Just family, close friends. I stood, raised a glass, and said, "To new beginnings. To closing chapters." Everyone clinked glasses. Ashley even forced a smile, thinking maybe, just maybe, I was softening. Then I pulled out a small oak box, the one I'd kept for years. Set it on the table. Inside, I said, are memories. Some of you may want to see them. I opened it. Photos, receipts, screenshots, copies of everything. Gasps. Stunned silence. Ashley's face drained of color as the whispers started. Hotel bills. Chase. Oh my God. I closed the box. I don't share this to embarrass her. I share it so there's no confusion. No rumors. No lies. Just truth. Ashley stood, trembling. You planned this." I sipped my wine. "Of course I did." She fled the room in tears. And I didn't follow. Here's the part no one saw coming. Not her, not Chase, not even Marcus, my lawyer. I didn't leave her penniless. I left her tethered. Remember the trust I'd moved the money into? I set aside a small monthly allowance in her name, just enough to scrape by. But with one condition, every payment carried my signature. Which meant, month after month, she'd have to see my name. Remember who kept the lights on. Remember who'd built the life she torched. Chase didn't last long. Guys like him never do once the fun dries up. He left within 6 months. And Ashley? She lives in a shabby apartment now. Drives an old sedan that breaks down twice a year. Every 30 days, she gets a deposit reminder, my name attached to her survival like a brand. That was my revenge. Not rage, not ruin, but permanence. Because fire burns out. But cold? Cold lasts forever.